Is this some kind of joke? The voice cut through the morning quiet of Aegis Armory like a knife through silk, sharp, cold, dripping with contempt. Captain Alexis Carter, 32 years old, stood at the glass counter in her simple ACU uniform. No medals, no patches, just the faded Supply Corps insignia on her shoulder. To the world, she was nobody, just another clerk doing inventory runs. But Helen Morrison, the store's manager, saw something else. She saw an easy target. "Ma'am," Helen said, drawing out the word until it became an insult. "This is a serious establishment. We sell precision instruments, not toys for—" She paused, her eyes scanning Alexis from head to toe. "Desk soldiers to play with." Alexis didn't flinch. Her green eyes remained steady, fixed on the vintage M1 Garand behind Helen's head. She had fired one just like it during a classified training op in 2018. The memory was tactile, the kick of the stock, the smell of cordite, the weight of history in her hands. "I'd like to purchase that rifle," Alexis said quietly. Her voice was low, calm, the kind of calm that comes from walking through hell and coming out the other side. Helen let out a short, cruel laugh. For 6 months, Alexis had kept her head down at Fort Hamilton. Her assignment was simple: work supply logistics, stay invisible, recover from the injuries that officially never happened, in a mission that officially never existed. She didn't need recognition. She needed time. Time for her left shoulder to heal from the shrapnel wound, time for the nightmares to fade, time to decide if she was ready to go back. But Helen Morrison had other plans. "That rifle costs $4,800, Helen said, tapping her red nails on the counter. "And frankly, honey, you don't look like you're in the market for a collector's piece. What are you going to do with it? Hang it in your barracks locker?" Behind Helen, a young employee named Kyle froze mid-restock. He had been watching the exchange with growing discomfort. Something about the way the woman in the supply uniform stood, ramrod straight, shoulders back, weight balanced, reminded him of his drill sergeant. But Helen was just getting started. "Let me see your paperwork. Driver's license, firearm permit, proof you're not going to hurt yourself. You know how it is, insurance liability. We can't just sell weapons to anyone who walks in off the street." Alexis reached into her back pocket, slowly, deliberately. She pulled out a leather wallet. It was ancient. Dark brown hide worn smooth as silk in some places, cracked and webbed with age in others. A faded bloodstain marked one corner. Helen wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Seriously? Is that thing from the Civil War? Does it even still close?" Helen reached across the counter and snatched the wallet from Alexis's hand before she could open it. "Let's see what we're dealing with here." She flipped it open with theatrical disdain. She pulled out the driver's license and firearm permit, then paused. Her fingers brushed something else. A small, hard object tucked into a hidden pocket. It was a military challenge coin. But not just any coin. Helen held it up to the light, squinting at the engraving. On one side was the emblem of the 75th Ranger Regiment. On the other, a single word: medic. "What's this?" Helen asked, her tone shifting from contempt to suspicion. "Did you buy this online? You know stolen valor is a crime, right?" Alexis said nothing. Her hands remained still at her sides. But inside, the walls were cracking. The moment Helen's fingers touched the coin, the gun store dissolved. Alexis wasn't standing in Aegis Armory anymore. She was back in the Syrian desert. July 2019. The air was thick with heat and dust, so dry it burned her lungs with every breath. The taste of copper filled her mouth, blood, her own, from a split lip. The Humvee was on fire. Black smoke poured from the engine, twisting into the sky like a demonic pillar. The IED had detonated 30 seconds ago, flipping the vehicle onto its side and sending shrapnel tearing through the cabin. 12 men, her unit, all wounded, some screaming, some silent, too silent. Her radio crackled. "Shadow 7, this is Command. What's your status?" "We're hit," Alexis gasped, dragging herself toward the wreckage. 12 casualties. Need immediate evac." "Negative, Shadow 7. Hostile forces closing on your position. Evac ETA, 20 minutes. You need to hold." 20 minutes. An eternity. She could smell burning fuel, hear the crack of distant rifle fire getting closer, feel the sting of sweat mixing with blood running down her face. Her hands moved on autopilot. Tourniquet, pressure bandage, morphine, repeat, over and over, dragging men out of the wreck, shielding them with her own body when the second explosion came. 11 of them made it. 11 souls who walked onto that helicopter because Alexis Carter refused to leave anyone behind. The coin in her pocket, the one Helen was now holding, had been pressed into her hand by her commanding officer 6 months later, in a ceremony that officially never happened. Alexis blinked. The gun store returned. Helen was still talking, her voice a wasp buzzing in the background. "I'm gonna have to call the police," Helen said, placing her hand over Alexis's wallet. "You don't just walk around with military memorabilia you didn't earn. It's disrespectful to real soldiers. I'm doing this for their sake." She reached for the phone. Alexis finally spoke. Her voice was still quiet, but now it carried an edge, steel wrapped in velvet. "Ma'am, I earned that coin, and I'd appreciate it if you'd return my property." Helen sneered. "Prove it." Before Alexis could respond, the bell on the door chimed. Not the soft tinkle of a casual customer. The sharp, purposeful sound of someone entering with authority. A man in an army dress uniform stepped inside. Captain Marcus Reed, 35, Alexis's former platoon leader. He was supposed to be stationed in Virginia. What was he doing here? Marcus's eyes locked on to Alexis. Then he saw Helen holding the wallet. His face went pale. "Step away from her," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. Helen laughed nervously. "Excuse me? I'm handling a potential stolen Valor case here." Marcus pulled out his phone. He didn't dial a number. He held it up so Helen could see the screen. It was a photo. Alexis in full combat gear, covered in blood and dust, kneeling beside a medical helicopter in the Syrian desert. 12 soldiers, alive, bandaged, staring at her like a guardian angel, surrounded her. The timestamp read July 14th, 2019. Her name is Captain Alexis Carter. She's a combat medical specialist with the 75th Ranger Regiment. That wallet you're holding, it belonged to her grandfather, a medic in Vietnam. She carried it through 3 deployments. The coin you're mocking, she earned it by saving 12 lives in a firefight that you'll never read about because it's still classified. Helen's hand began to shake. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Marcus cut her off. "You saw a woman in a supply uniform and decided she wasn't worth your respect." He turned to Alexis. "Ma'am, Colonel Davies is outside. He'd like a word." The door opened again. This time Colonel James Davies entered, flanked by 2 sergeants in dress blues. The air temperature dropped 20 degrees. The colonel walked directly to Alexis. He stopped 3 feet away, brought his heels together with a sound like a rifle shot, and rendered the sharpest salute Alexis had seen in years. "Captain Carter," he said, his voice filled with reverence. "It's an honor." Alexis returned the salute, her movements crisp despite the ache in her shoulder. The colonel turned to address the room. "For those who don't know, you are in the presence of a genuine American hero. Captain Carter held off enemy combatants for 20 minutes while treating 12 critically wounded soldiers. She was recommended for the Silver Star. That recommendation is still pending classification review." He looked at Helen, his gaze colder than a winter in North Korea. "You were going to call the police on her?" Helen couldn't speak. Her face had gone from smug to ashen. Alexis held up a hand. "Sir, that's enough." She turned to Helen, and her expression wasn't angry. It was sad, weary, the look of someone who had seen too much to waste energy on petty cruelty. "Ma'am, respect isn't about the rank on someone's chest or the medals on their uniform. It's about seeing the human being in front of you. The person bagging your groceries, the janitor cleaning your office, the soldier buying a rifle. We all deserve basic dignity. That's the lesson. I hope you remember it." She picked up her wallet, placed the coin back in its pocket, and turned to leave. 3 months later, Helen was working a different job. The video of the incident had gone viral. Aegis Armory had closed within weeks. She was restocking shelves at a grocery store when she saw a woman in civilian clothes walk past. Brown hair, green eyes, moving with that same quiet, controlled grace. It was Alexis. Her hands froze. She thought about apologizing, about explaining, about asking for forgiveness. But Alexis simply smiled, small, kind, genuine, and kept walking. She had already moved on, because that's what real soldiers do. The heroes around us don't always wear their medals. They don't always announce their sacrifices. Sometimes, they're standing in line behind you at the store. Sometimes, they're the quiet person in the corner, carrying wounds you'll never see. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Tales of Valor. We tell the stories of women warriors who serve in silence and sacrifice in shadows. Share this video to honor the real heroes who walk among us. And drop a comment. Have you ever misjudged someone only to learn their incredible story? Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay humble, and always, always respect the warriors who protect us, even when they're not in uniform.